We see it all the time, right? These massive companies teaming out to build a new car, or maybe explore for oil, or launch some new streaming service. But behind the scenes, that's where the accounting gets, well, really tricky. How do you actually put a shared project on your company's books?
Seriously, think about it. If two companies build a factory together, who actually owns the building? Who's on the hook for the loan? Answering that question is absolutely critical if you want to understand the true financial health of a company. And that is precisely the problem that the accounting standard IFRS 11 is designed to solve. So, meet IFRS 11. You can think of it as the official rule book that brings some much-needed clarity to all this chaos. Its whole purpose is to lay down clear principles for any company that has an interest in a project they control jointly with someone else. It's basically our guide through this really complex world. Okay, first things first. In the world of IFRS 11, we don't really call these partnerships. The standard uses a very specific term, a joint arrangement. So what on earth does that actually mean? Here's the official definition. And yeah, it seems pretty simple, but trust me, everything, and I mean everything, hangs on those last two words, joint control. That is the absolute key to this entire standard. So for an arrangement to even fall under the standard, it has to have these two essential building blocks. First, there's got to be a contract, some kind of enforceable agreement, and second, that contract must grant joint control to at least two of the parties involved. And that leads us to the first and honestly the most important test an accountant has to perform. Does joint control actually exist? Because if it doesn't, you're not even in the world of IFRS 11 anymore. The standard gives us this really powerful definition. See, it's not about having 51% of the votes or just being the biggest player in the room. No, it's about a very specific power dynamic that's laid out right there in the contract. And it all boils down to this phrase, unanimous consent. This means no single party can make a big decision on their own. The parties who share control, they all have to agree before anything important happens. It means one party can effectively veto the others. That, right there, is the heart of joint control. Okay, let's make this real with a quick example. Imagine you've got three parties, A, B, and C. The contract says you need 75% of the votes to make any key decision. Now, look at the numbers. Party A has 50%. They can't do it alone. Party B has 30%. They can't do it alone either. But together, they've got 80%. They can meet that threshold. And what's crucial here is that A needs B and B needs A. Party C, with their 20%, is kind of just along for the ride. This is a brilliant illustration of joint control in action. A and B must unanimously agree to get anything done. All right, so let's say we've done our homework. We've established that, yep, joint control exists, we have a joint arrangement. Now we arrive at this critical fork in the road. The very next step is to classify the arrangement. And this single choice, man, it changes everything about how it shows up on the financial statements. Every single joint arrangement has to be classified as either a joint operation or a joint venture. And the difference? It's all about what you actually have a right to. In a joint operation, you have direct rights to your share of the specific assets, and you're responsible for your share of the liabilities. A great way to think about it is you and a friend co-owning a car. You own half the metal, half the engine, and you are on the hook for half the loan payment. But in a joint venture, you have rights to the net assets of the whole arrangement. This is more like you and your friend owning shares in a separate company, and that company is the one that owns the car. You own a piece of the company, not a piece of the car itself. See the difference?
So how do you decide which one it is? Well, it's not a random choice, not a coin flip. The standard lays out a really logical, step-by-step process to figure it out.
Here's a simple way to think about it. First, step one, you look at the structure. Is it just a contractual agreement, or did the partners actually create a separate company, what the standard calls a separate vehicle, to hold everything? Second, step two, you have to review the contract itself. What does the legal agreement actually say about who gets the assets and who's on the hook for the liabilities? And finally, step three, you look at other facts and circumstances. What's the real economic substance of this deal? What's it designed to do?
And this is a point I really want to drive home. The standard makes this crystal clear. The contract is king. So even if the partners set up a separate legal company, which you'd normally think points to a joint venture, the contract can have terms that completely override that structure. If the contract says the parties have direct rights to the assets and obligations for the liabilities, then boom, it's a joint operation, no matter what the legal form is.
So now we get to the most important question of all. Why does any of this matter? Who cares what we call it? Well, it matters because whether you label an arrangement an operation or a venture tells two completely different financial stories to the outside world. Just look at the incredible difference here. If it's a joint operation, you put your share of the factory, the debt, the revenue, the expenses, all of it, directly onto your own company's financial statements. But if it's a joint venture, it's just one single line item, an investment in joint venture. That's it.
Let that sink in for a second. The exact same economic partnership can look radically different to an investor. In one version, the company looks bigger, right? It has more assets, more debt. In the other, it's just this clean, single-line investment. And this has a huge real-world impact. A joint operation is going to affect things like your debt-to-equity ratio or your asset turnover. A joint venture won't, at least not directly. So for anyone trying to analyze a company's financial health, whether you're an investor, a student, a manager, understanding this distinction is absolutely non-negotiable. You have to know what you're really looking at.
So, I'll leave you with this to think about. The next time you're looking at a balance sheet and you see that single line, investment in joint venture, ask yourself, what assets and what liabilities are hiding behind that one number? Because now you have the tools to see the full story.